So here we go, just going live on YouTube. Okay, so anyone watching this over on YouTube, make sure to scroll down and you will see a list of all of the topics we discussed today, and you'll click the timestamps and go directly to where you want to go. A little time management tip when it comes to YouTube: make sure to always watch videos where people are just talking, like I'm currently talking, to click the gear icon and change the speed to 1.5. That's still understandable, but you get through the videos a little bit quicker. So you can't do that while it's live, but if you're ever watching videos after the fact, then I would highly recommend that you do that. All right. So I can see your questions starting to come in. Keep them coming. But I wanted to hit a few points to talk about how a few things that I have learned over the years, as well as things that I've been learning recently, to help me fix a big issue that you guys who've been watching me and following my emails and stuff would know. My biggest project right now is fixing the workflow issues that I've been experiencing. Because one of the reasons I haven't gotten into an intensive language learning project is because I just know there's no way it would work for me right now, because I have too many things related to my business and too many things in my backlog of emails and other things I need to do, and I just have not got a good hold over my time, but I have been fixing that. And once I know I can organize my time better, then I will be beginning my next language learning project. And I figured I'd discuss this because I know a lot of you guys would have similar challenges with how you manage your time, with things interfering from other kind of sources and stuff. So let me see. I just wanted to turn off transcoding. Okay. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So if I start with a couple of things, so the obvious one, I think, when it comes to, let's say you have a project, whether it be language learning, and I'll be using that as my main example, but any kind of project. And this year, of the last couple of years, I've had a project that I want to be able to run a marathon. You know, I've also had projects that I want to complete a book, and I've had various levels of success, and I've written a bunch of books. I've successfully written those. But then with the marathon, I trained for the New York City Marathon last year, and I was doing pretty well, but unfortunately the week of the marathon, I only had 2 hours sleep a night for the entire week, and then I was only able to run 16 miles out of the 26.2 miles. So it was kind of, I trained enough to give me that level of success, but then I didn't reach my final goal. So I'm just trying to do that again this year, and that's another kind of project. So one of the things that helps a lot, regardless of what the project is to have specific goals. This is very central to the whole philosophy around the name of the website that I started in the first place, Fluent in 3 months, was that really specific goal of when I thought of fluency, I had a very, very precise idea of B2 level upper intermediate and what that meant to me in terms of being socially equivalent in the target language. And I'm not saying that needs to be your language goal. Sometimes I have had like more modest language goals. I've changed them depending on the project. But what is the most important is the specificity. So if you have specific goals and you kind of have milestones in mind for those goals, that's going to help a lot, because you're aiming for something that you know is going to give you a real output. And a big mistake with language learning is people just have this general learn Spanish. And I don't think that's as useful as have a 5-minute conversation within 2 months. And once you know that's your project, you can plan that. You can say, okay, what do I need to get like halfway there? What do I need to be doing on a day-to-day basis to reach that specific goal? And that defines your project. You know, with my running, I have like goals to run races that are just 5Ks and half marathons and so on. And these specific milestones can help you a lot. Okay, so first thing I wanted to mention. So let's see, over on YouTube, we have J-Hope, and J-Hope was with us yesterday and was just asking how I would suggest balancing language learning with other studies. Okay, and for more context, J-Hope is a 14-year-old. So that obviously changes how you manage your time, because in my case, I have more control over my day. And if you're a student, you have less control over your day. So you have to work within those limitations. And there are a lot of priorities when you're a student to pass particular exams because of how each subject adds up in a different way. So it's very hard to say, oh, just make language learning the priority. But even within that, something else that I, like among the many things I want to talk about today, one of them is realizing where you waste time and what sacrifices you're willing to make. So I would say the time that you might be putting into your other subjects, if you feel that's enough to give you the kind of grades that you are happy with, then that's fantastic. But then if you need more time for language learning, ask yourself, how much time am I spending playing video games? And I play video games. You guys would notice from the various video game statues that I have behind me, the pixelated things on my shelves. So I'm a big video games fan, but I also realize when I'm playing video games, this is time I am not putting into my big project. It's time that helps me relax and so on, but this is something I could potentially sacrifice if I wanted the extra time for language learning. And then some of us tend to just spend time wasting time on the internet, scrolling through Facebook or Twitter or any of those kind of feeds that we don't get any true use out of, or binge watching shows on Netflix. So this is something, if you think about like balancing your language learning with your other studies, I would imagine more looking, where is your time like going? Where is it getting used in places that aren't really enriching your life as much? And decide, can you make those sacrifices? You don't have to make them forever, but if you decide for the next 3 months, I'm not going to play video games because I want to have that extra time specifically for my language project, then that is going to make a huge difference. And especially when you have limited control over your time, you can kind of squeeze more hours out of your day. So that's what I would suggest as the biggest thing for J-Hope. Okay? And then the next thing I was going to say before I go to the next question is that I think you should prioritize wisely. And this is tricky because we have a lot of priorities. It's the trendy thing now to say how busy we are. I am definitely a busy person, but most people are busy. Most people have way too many things to do. A lot of people have different kinds of busyness. If you're a parent, you are extraordinarily busy because you have to take care of your children, make sure that you're earning money to provide for them. So it's very hard to take a few hours out of the day just for you. And this is why when it comes to the word priority, it's very important to decide which things are the most important. So if you're putting aside time for your language learning, you've found that time based on something like what I just said. The next problem is, what are you actually spending that time on? And this is why a lot of people will say it takes them years and years and years just to learn the basics of a language. I would say that this is in large part because they aren't using their time for the right priorities. And in my case, I took German in school for 5 years, and a lot of that was just studying grammar and being presented German in an uninteresting way for me. And unfortunately, that meant I didn't end up learning the language. Whereas when I went back into it later, I realized, and something I talk about all the time, if you have similar goals in language learning to me, where first your biggest priority initially is you want to get conversations with people, you want that to be a possibility, then that means the priority means you need to speak from day one. You need to get into actual conversations right from the start. And sometimes when we're thinking about our language learning project, we prioritize studying lists of words, studying grammar, maybe using apps that are easy because they're just swiping, having the radio in the background. And these things can help. They can help in different ways, and it's debatable how much they help. But ultimately, you need to prioritize what is most important for your project. And especially if you have specific goals, then you can really reach those goals because you end up doing something that gives you the results you're looking for. And it's very difficult because when it comes to a project like learning a language, the amount of things you need to prioritize can feel overwhelming. There are so many words you don't know. there are so many ways that when you speak a sentence, you're grammatically incorrect. And that's why if you just say everything is a priority, then you're spreading yourself thin. So I would recommend that you find what your priorities are, really hone in on that and try to get that thing as well as you possibly can. This is why I tend to tell people to speak the language and then to maybe accept grammar mistakes as a beginner, and then later on when you're a confident speaker, then you actually focus on those grammar issues that you're having, you know. Okay, so next question is from Jason Smith on YouTube. Hi Benny, I'm in Sydney. I'd like to know how you manage your resources. I feel overwhelmed. Duolingo, Memrise, podcasts, italki, the language hacking book, the Destinos show, what, you know. And so he's asking how can he manage those resources. It can definitely feel overwhelming when you think about the amount of ways presented to you to improve your language skills. And this for me comes down to you can put aside time. Like when it comes to project management, sometimes we have to accept there is this, I would kind of say it's kind of like a transition phase at the start of the project, that you're not necessarily making your best progress, but you're experimenting. So for instance, when it comes to finding a good language teacher, I accept that at the start of my project, I'm going to lose a little time because I'm going to test out a bunch of teachers, and some of those teachers are not going to be good for me. They're going to be a little too academic for my personal tastes, or the conversation is going to be not so interesting and it doesn't flow so easily, and they're not helping me as much as I wish they could. So that is me accepting at the start that I just need to test out different teachers, and then I do waste a little time, but by doing that, I find the right teacher and then I can move forward. So in your case, you're saying, you know, you've got all these things, Duolingo, Memrise, podcasts, and so on. I would say maybe decide that a part of your project for the next week is going to be testing those resources out, and you realize this next week you accept that you're not necessarily going to make that much progress. It's not going to be the most important week in your language learning when it comes to like how different you were from the start of the week to the end of the week. But that week is still crucial because you start to see which of those resources do you feel is actually making a difference. So I think that, like Duolingo, for instance, I think that is useful, especially when you have like little blocks of time. Like if you're waiting in a supermarket and the queue or the line is very long, you can just take that out and you can kind of use it for a few minutes. And that's a very good use of that app. It's kind of gamified, so it keeps it interesting. It's available at the drop of a hat. So that's useful. But when it comes to how much of a difference it makes in your language learning, maybe you want to be putting your focus in something that's really pushing you and challenging you and keeping 100% of your focus, and it's helping you with specific issues that you're having. There may be parts of Duolingo that do that, but I found that if like podcasts, I tend to always tell people that's my number one resource when my problem is listening comprehension. When people speak to me and I don't understand, and that is my biggest problem. Because if I still can't even say anything, then listening comprehension isn't my biggest problem. Just the ability to say stuff is my biggest problem. But if listening comprehension is my biggest problem, podcasts has to be my priority. And that, especially if you're a perfectionist, that makes it very difficult, because then you have to accept you're prioritizing this thing and other things are going to suffer, because you could also be studying vocab lists. And that means you're not going to be expanding on your vocab as quickly as you would, but you have to accept that. You have to accept a certain amount of imperfection when it comes to any kind of project. So I would take all of those things and maybe test them out. Have a week that the purpose of that week is to see which of these resources is really tackling your biggest problem in the language right now. And then when you see that, you can be like, okay, for the next month, I'm going to use just this resource. I'm going to be able to finish this book, or I'm going to be able to get through all of the podcasts in this particular like season of podcasts, whatever it might be. Or I'm going to go on italki. I'm going to make speaking with a teacher my priority. Whatever it is, when you focus your energy, you're going to get a lot better on those things. Okay. And keep the questions coming, everybody. We've still got loads of time, so make sure you type your questions over on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Mixer, and I'll be very happy to answer them. Okay, so next question is from Mateos on YouTube, and he says, do you think it's a good idea to not get enough sleep? This is it's a great question. I like your phrasing. A good idea to not get enough sleep. I think sleep is a very much undervalued resource when it comes to any kind of project, especially one that requires you to be sharp and to use your best cognitive abilities, as it were. And I have found that when I'm not getting enough sleep, I am a worse language learner. I'm simply not able to focus. I'm not able to remember things as easily. And it can be tempting to squeeze a few more hours out of your day by getting up extra early or by staying up extra late. But sleep is just so important. And one of the points I wanted to make is that simply taking care of yourself, your body, sleeping as much as you need. This is different for each person. I wouldn't say 8 hours is any kind of magic number. It depends on the person. You know when you feel well rested. Eating well is very important. That's going to change your energy levels, and that could compensate if you're not getting enough sleep. There are other ways you can get that energy. You don't want to rely on coffee, but if you're eating healthy, that could tip the scale a little bit. And of course, exercise. Whenever I exercise, I personally like running in the morning. When I'm exercising, then I feel like I just feel more focused. I feel like the blood is flowing in my body, and I can really see where I need to go. Whereas I feel a little bit groggy if I'm just eating heavy food and I'm not getting exercise and I'm not getting enough sleep. Then I would say you absolutely need to prioritize treating your body well. And that is going to, like, anyone who feels they don't have enough energy, they don't have the motivation to really dive into their projects. It may have nothing to do with the resources that you're using or how difficult the task that you're trying to do is. It may have more to do with just your body is not being treated well enough to be able to do these projects. So a healthier life is definitely going to make a big difference. Okay. And Jason on YouTube had also asked, do you have a daily structure? So daily study structure, when I'm in intense, so I have a very specific understanding when it comes to my projects. The way that I have had any success in any project, the way I have written a bunch of books, the way I have successfully learned languages is by making that my absolute number one priority. And that means that there are times when it's not my priority. And that's been the case for me lately because I've been working on books. I've been trying to get my business back ahead so that I can get back into my language learning projects. And by having that focus, then you have a daily structure related to that project. So I would not have a daily timetable, a daily schedule that I would be able to say to you what it is right now that applies universally, because I might be intensively learning one language, and that's been the case for me in many of the projects you would see on my YouTube channel, where I upload a video every week, and I've been like super intensively prioritizing that language. But that might just be for 3 months, and then the other 9 months out of the year, I might have been maintaining my language, and then my routine's very different. And then when I'm not in language learning mode, my routine is different. So the daily structure depends on what your priority is. And if your priority is a particular project, then I would try to start my day as soon as possible to make that a part of my routine. And getting into a routine is one of the most important things. One way that I got into running every morning was I realized that I needed to run in the morning. It's just my best time for running. And I would run into all these obstacles. I'd wake up, I might check my email, but then I realized, oh no, there's something important in my email. And I would get distracted. I would do that for a while. And before I knew it, the morning had gone on enough that I just didn't feel I could prioritize running anymore. So what I did instead, and this is a very simple trick that a lot of people do, is to either go to sleep in your running clothes or to have them right at the side of your bed. So the first thing you do is get in those running clothes, and that little change begins this routine. and getting into a systematic routine of like if you try to start studying but then something distracts you, your phone rings or you get hungry, all of these problems may get you down, but I would look at each one of them as an opportunity to see, okay, if this is truly stopping me from getting in the project, like you need to not get distracted by anything that can come up. But if it's truly distracting you from your project, you need to find a way to make your routine get around that. So you make your routine include eating enough ahead of time so that you're not going to be hungry during your project. You make your routine include turning your phone into airplane mode so you can't get texts from people or notifications from your apps, because that's going to take you out of being in language learning mode or whatever your project may be. And just making it part of your daily routine is so essential. So in general, if I'm in a language learning routine, I have different parts of it. Generally, the central part of my intensive language learning as a beginner and lower intermediate learner is around the conversations I would have with native speakers. So I might have a 4 or 5 p.m. booking with a teacher over Skype, and that's kind of what my day is leading up towards. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, yesterday at 4 o'clock, I had my Skype session with a teacher and I made all of these mistakes. And this is my biggest weakness. And then I would plan my day around that weakness. I would say, okay, let's say I think I can't distinguish between saying I do something and you do something. So today I'm going to work on those I-you conjugations. I'm going to try and get a little bit of an understanding. And that dictates my day. So I make sure that what I have in my routines morph along with what my bigger priorities are within the project. Okay? So next, over on Twitch, we have Dams789, and he makes a good point. He says, or he or she says, just got to be careful of not burning out with so much language learning. Absolutely. Burnout is such a big problem. So one thing I learned for my intensive projects is I actually have to put in time, even in my most intensive projects, for breaks. And I would have, what I tend to lead them up towards is very big monthly goals. And for me, that tended to be geared towards recording a particular YouTube video. Maybe I wanted to interview someone. Maybe it was going to be my very first time speaking the language on camera, whatever my level happened to be. And so I'd be working so hard up towards that goal that I found that if after I reached that goal and I would just go straight into working towards my next monthly goal, I wouldn't have the energy, and I would burn my energy out. I wouldn't be able to keep that level of intensity up. So I would need a day off. I would always have at least one, if not a whole weekend off at certain points in my project, and just to do brain dead things, to play silly computer games or whatever it is. And it's very important because burning yourself out, we prioritize the language learning project, but it's like I was saying a couple of minutes ago, you have to take care of your body, and sometimes overusing your brain is a problem, and that's kind of you might have that initial burst, but if you reach a plateau, there are many reasons for that. One of the reasons may be you're just pushing yourself too hard. And it is frustrating because we like to think, but all this time I'm wasting that I could be improving my my project. And when it comes down to it, you have to take everything into consideration. So absolutely keep burnout in mind when it comes to any kind of project. Okay, so Amelia on YouTube says, any tips for those with limited energy? So think more spoon theory rather than something like lack of sleep. I'm in school and typically don't have much energy after studying and homework. Yeah, that is that's definitely a problem that a lot of people have even when they're not in school, is the lack of energy. And one of the mistakes I made was trying to do some of my more important projects at the very end of the day after doing everything else. And unfortunately, that never worked out well for me. I would be too tired. I'm more of a morning person. Whenever I leave something for the very end of the day, then I do not do well with it. I waste a lot of time and I just make myself more tired for the next day. So this is a case of looking at how you arrange your day. And if you are doing something like you watch TV because you do it with your family and it's just something you like to do, you might want to see like what are you spending your time with. And one of the hardest things that I think we will all struggle with is doing the less desirable tasks as the first things that we do. Like some people say they call it eat that frog, because eating frogs is an undesirable thing. Not that you're going to succeed in eating frogs, but that's kind of a way of thinking, like if you have the most annoying thing that you have to do, what we tend to do is do the things we enjoy first. And we're like, I'll get to that later. And then it gets pushed forward and pushed into the latest part of the day when we do tend to be tired. So I would say if you need to do your homework and you need to study and you have other things that you need to do in your day, then look at all of that. Like write down a list. I need to do my maths homework. I need to study some poetry, and look at all of that stuff and then see which of all of those is going to be the most exhausting and the one that you really feel like it's the most important, as it were, but it's one that you feel when you're low energy you're not going to do it as well. And it's so frustrating to do this, but the best thing you could possibly do is make that the very first thing. So in my case, I happen to be good at mathematics. I enjoy it, and whenever I was in school I would be happy to do my mathematics homework. The problem is, if I started my evening with my mathematics homework, then I would do that very well and I'd be enthusiastic and all that, but then I would be more tired when it came to the things I didn't want to do as much. So in my case, it would actually be better to do that last. And that takes so much motivation because the thing you enjoy the most, you kind of want to do that first. So I would say within all of the things you need to do, try to see what do you think is the hardest, and if you have to do it, do that first. And the things you enjoy doing, the things you can naturally do, even if you're a little tired, then do those last. And like if I can, even at the end of a tired day, I could still do my mathematics homework because it comes more naturally to me. So that is the last thing that I should do when it comes to my day, because I know the harder things, I've got to do them first. So that's what I would suggest if you have limited energy, because there are some things you are able to do even when you're low energy, but you have to accept the things that you can't do when you're low energy have to be done first. Okay? All right, so let's see what else you guys have been asking for me here. Before I go to your questions, just some other things on my list that I wanted to bring up is to plan ahead. So you got to plan for things to not go well, because when we imagine our project, and especially if you like have a calendar and you plan out your day or your week, and you're like, I'll be studying from this time to this time, and then I'll go into this thing, and then I'll go into this thing. The problem with that kind of a strategy is that in many cases, something is going to come up. And, we all have various demands on our time. We might live with people who say, I really need your help to clean the house. Or a friend calls you and says, oh my God, this once in a lifetime opportunity of whatever has just happened. A concert with Britney Spears or whoever you love. And you just end up doing that thing. So what I do when this is hard for me because I'm an optimistic person. I like to think that things will always work out in the end. It'll all be great. But the problem with that is if I plan my day and I'm far too optimistic, then I might think I can go from one thing to the other thing to the other thing, and pretty much always something will interfere, or I'll take longer because I'm not estimating how much time a particular task will take. So what I have to do is in my calendar, I add in dead buffer zones. So this is literally blocks of time where nothing is planned, and I'm not deciding that those are times for me to like have lunch. I don't mean like non-project related, or that's when I have a nap, or that's when I take a break. No, I would still put break in. I would still put this is when I plan to have lunch into my daily plan. But I will also, and I don't like doing this, but whenever I do it, I'm glad I did. I will also block one time and just call it buffer, and 1 hour as at least 1 hour in the morning, at least 1 hour in the afternoon. And this is because I personally am bad at estimating how long things will take. So by adding in that buffer zone, I'm planning in case things don't go according to plan. In case I get a phone call and I suddenly need to spend a half an hour solving some annoying logistical problem and it's unavoidable, then that means that at least I've planned for that. And then if nothing bad happens and you reach the end of your day and you still have this time available, then you can still just look back at your day and be like, okay, I can do a little bit of extra time at that task that I finished on time as I originally planned. I can do a half more of my Anki vocab learning or whatever it might be. So you have to plan for things to not go according to plan, if that makes any sense. Add in buffers, and when you plan for things to not be perfect, then when they are not perfect, and that's just how the world works, then it's more likely to be smooth for you. Whereas when you plan for the perfect day and things don't go according to plan, it can be very demotivating. And this is the kind of thing that stops us from getting into it the next day. So keep that in mind, okay? Next, let's see what else you guys were saying. Okay, so Holly has a question for me. She says, how do you prioritize healthy food when you're super busy? I've been crazy busy all week and I keep grabbing bad snacks to eat while running to the car for my next errand, which of course makes me feel even worse. Yep, in the most ideal case, we would all have loads of time and we would be like cooking a really healthy dinner and like a gorgeous, fantastic meal and eating that. And that's not realistic in many days. Some people do make that work in their routine, and I'm jealous of those people. And I've also made I've also fallen into that trap where I just like will order delivery and I'll do it multiple days in a row, and it's bad food, and I'm kind of in a hurry, so I don't even have time to kind of research it. Where's some good healthy food I can get delivered? I'm just like, that veggie burger from that place, and I'll just end up eating the buns that kind of just are bad, like extra bread weight. It's never a good idea. So what I found works for me is to get pre-packaged healthy food that I can heat up very quickly. Because the problem in my case has always been I don't have the time to prepare the food. I don't have the time to research where to get better food, but maybe if ahead of time I just had a bunch of things I can put in the oven for 20 minutes, or I can put in the microwave even. There are healthy things like that you can eat, and there are things you can buy that are pre-packaged, and you'll also save yourself money from going out and grabbing bad food, because when we make the decision in the moment, we tend to think, well, I'm really hungry right now, and I've been working hard, so I deserve a pizza. And that kind of instant decision that we make is unfortunately going to lead to a lot of bad decisions. But if we are planning our week and we decide ahead of time, I want to eat healthy on Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, then we will maybe order something. There's some services online that will ship you every week prepackaged food. At least I know here in the States there's a few. But then otherwise, you can also in supermarkets buy prepackaged food that is something you decide ahead of time you can put in, and you need to, again, plan for the worst. We can think, ideally, I'm going to cook food. I'm going to cook the healthiest lunch I can possibly imagine. But you also have to plan for the times when that's not going to be likely. You're in a rush, so you just grab the thing, put it in the microwave, it's done in 2 minutes, and it's not as ideal as cooking it yourself, but it's still way better than going out and grabbing fast food or having fast food delivered to you, which ends up being a lot more expensive as well. So the prepackaged food is one thing I would suggest when it comes to solving that kind of problem. Okay, next thing I want to talk about as I continue on with the questions, and keep your questions coming. I'll be online for the next 15 minutes, ready to address any kind of related time management projects, management things you guys are thinking about. So next thing is to eliminate distractions. I mentioned this previously, that you could turn your phone into airplane mode, but there are lots of other ways that you need to make sure you're not taken out of your intensive study, so that you have uninterrupted study time or spoken time or whatever, even homework time. And the way to do this depends on what you tend to get distracted by. So when I first started working online, I found that I didn't get a lot of work done because I would go to Facebook, I would go to Reddit, I go to all these sites that just had nothing to do with the work I was doing. And I discovered there's a lot of plugins you can install in your browser that just, like, you decide ahead of time between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. I am not allowed to use this computer to go on Facebook or to go on any other sites that you go on that don't enrich your life. You might still need your computer. You might still need to go to websites that give you language learning material. So just turning off the internet isn't really going to solve the problem. But you can block specific websites, and you can make it so that these things are very difficult to disable. And if you decide ahead of time, again, you make the best decisions for your week. If you're thinking ahead of time rather than in the moment, if you decide, oh, should I go on Facebook? Because in the moment, we always feel, it's only a few minutes. It's not going to make that big a difference. But all of those few minutes add up. Whereas ahead of time, if we decide, I'm just not allowed to use Facebook until 9 p.m., when my brain has kind of been used up for all of its energy for projects, and it's fine if I catch up with my friends, then you block that out. And there's lots of different things. I know for Firefox, I used to use Leech Block. There's Stay Focused, and I think that's in Chrome. And there's lots of other ones. You guys can kind of share them in the comments if you like. But otherwise, just looking into different browser plugins, there are things that prevent your whole computer from accessing certain websites. So even if you have apps and chatting apps that pop up and bother you, and you can install things on your phone that also prevent you from accessing those things. So stopping yourself from giving in to those temptations is very important. And you can also, if you end up watching a lot of Netflix, maybe you can tell a family member or someone who lives with you to not let you watch Netflix and to log out, and only they know the password. And that way you have no choice but to watch Netflix when they agree you've worked a lot. Because if we leave it up to our moment-to-moment decisions, we tend to make bad decisions. I know I make bad decisions in the moment, but when I plan ahead of time, I make it so I'm preventing myself from very easily slipping into those bad trends that can make a world of difference. Okay? All right, so now next question. J-Hope again on YouTube. How do you manage your time when studying to sit various official exams to test your levels? I wouldn't say managing your time is as relevant in that case. I'd say it's more that's the project, and that's how you, because what your project specifically is going to dictate what you're doing in your day-to-day process. So I always, when it comes to whatever my project is, so let's take your example of sitting a language exam. So the end goal, let's say 6 months from now, you want to be a B2 level, for example. Then you know that's got your writing and your reading and your spoken and your listening comprehension. So those are 4 parts, and you want to be at a certain level with each of those 4 parts. So you break those up. I imagine this like pyramid that breaks up into all of these goals, and I'm kind of constantly seeing what are the individual parts that will get me there. So if it's about improving my listening skills, then I've broken that down, and I know every day I need to be listening to this podcast that I know helps me. And then every Wednesday I need to be having my spoken session, and it's kind of breaking that up and seeing what is realistic for you, and if possible testing to make sure that works, because you can't really plan the next 3 months perfectly right now. You have to have more of a dynamic plan that can change how you react when certain things become new, bigger priorities, or other things are easier than you thought they were. So it's why if I'm sitting in an exam, I would actually maybe once every month I would do another mock exam, and then I would see, okay, wow, my oral skills are definitely improving, so I don't need to worry about that as much. So for month 2, I'm going to give speaking a lot less of a priority. But wow, I really did badly in the listening exam. So my listening, I need to double the amount of time I'm working on my listening skills. And it becomes more adaptive to what your biggest issues are in that case. So that's kind of what I would do. I would break it down and see what your biggest issues are, but do mock exams, because that's how you can see where you need to focus your time. Okay, so let me see. What's the next question is from another one from Mateos on YouTube. Should I relax during the day? How much? Relax. Yeah, you relax, but something like I was saying before. Use your relax time for when you have the least energy. I think sometimes if we relax during the day, if we deserve it, I think that's fine for when you need your recovery periods after a very intensive project. But on a day-to-day basis, I would save my relaxed time for the end of the day, because that's when I'm just too tired. You have to plan to relax when you don't really have the brain power to do anything else. And in that case, if you can't even process a foreign language and you end up watching a Netflix show in your native language, that's okay if it's at the very end of your day because you're just too tired to do anything else. But I would definitely not schedule in relaxed time if you're in an intensive project. And that's kind of what it all comes down to, is how intensive is your project. If you're only learning a language or doing something part-time, then you've decided it's getting 4 or 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week, whatever it might be. And then you're also deciding my relaxed time is getting 10 hours a week or 20 hours a week. And if that's how you've organized your time, then great. But I think relaxing is something humans tend to do naturally anyway. We are lazy, and we gravitate towards things that are less of an effort. So I think actually planning to relax is unnecessary, because we tend to take lazy routes and we tend to relax anyway. At least I do. So I never need to schedule in relaxed time, because I tend to just force it in sometimes, at least myself. Okay. Let's see. Over on Facebook, Brenda's asking, she said she found some Learn While You Sleep audio. What do I think about that? I think that this is the biggest gimmick you can imagine, because it's really feeding into our need to do things with little effort, and it's very tempting. And it's why a lot of things, when they're pitching language learning projects, they might say the easiest way to learn a language, and I'm not a fan of that way of thinking, because there are lots of easy ways to learn a language. And when it comes to something like Rosetta Stone, for instance, I would always say, sure, Rosetta Stone is the easy way to learn a language, but it's not going to give you any real results. It's very easy to sit in a software program, click some buttons, and hear a harp sound, be like, yay, I'm so smart, a harp sound played for me. And that's easy. But sometimes the hardest things are what gives you the best results. So I think something that will play a language while you sleep, this feeds into I want to get results from no effort. And I fell into this when I was trying to learn German. I really thought, if I had the radio playing in the background all day long in German, then some of that has to reach my subconscious and make me work in the background, and my German's just going to naturally be better. And none of it helped. I did that for a while, and in retrospect, I really should not have been thinking that's. It wasn't hurting me necessarily, but what was hurting was me thinking that that's going to help my listening comprehension. An actual focus, giving your 100% attention to something, is what's really going to make a difference. And while you sleep, if something's playing, that's just ridiculous. You might get used to the sounds of a language, but how useful that actually is in your day-to-day use of the language, and really integrating it into how you understand, how you express yourself, it's not going to make that big of a difference. Okay, last couple of questions in the last few minutes. I hope I've been getting to all your questions, and everyone who's just watching this, make sure to subscribe and click notification bells, or access the notification options depending on the platform you're currently on. I'll be doing a St. Patrick's Day live Q&A on this Saturday, where I talk about anything Irish culture, Irish language related. So definitely check that out on Saturday. And otherwise, I got a bunch of videos coming up on my YouTube channel related to Irishness, and so definitely check that out. But last couple of questions. Let's see. From the Grand Old Trogre, interesting name, on YouTube. While vacationing abroad, specifically for language learning, how much time would you spend both studying in your condo hotel, and how much would you actually spend immersing yourself in the culture? It's an interesting question, because when it comes to vacationing, I don't think vacationing is the best situation for language learning. I don't think physically being in the country is the most ideal way, just thinking that that's going to solve all your problems. I moved to Spain after I graduated. I figured I would just naturally pick up Spanish, but I didn't. I gravitated towards English speakers. And I found when I'm in holiday mode, then I am there to relax. I am devoting my day to reading a book and going for a swim and doing things that aren't really related to a project. And I think mixing pleasure and business like that is difficult. I would, if you're going abroad and you really truly want to improve your language skills, I would make it an absolute priority. But otherwise, you're not going to get something good in either way. You're not going to truly enjoy your vacation, because you end up feeling bad that you're not putting enough time into your language learning project, and you're going to end up not enjoying or making huge progress in your language learning project, because you spend so much time relaxing. So for me, vacations are not the most ideal way of you say you might be studying in your condo or hotel. No. When it comes to studying and being abroad, what I highly recommend is, if you have a date in mind that you're going to be in another country, let's say it's 5 months from now, I would study like crazy in the next 5 months. I would spend as much time as you possibly can improving your language skills, doing as many things as you can. But then when you're in the country, especially if you're thinking vacation, that's maybe a week, 2 weeks at best in that country, then you do not want to be studying. You don't want to be listening to podcasts, because you have a very limited time in that country. I'm not saying don't use the language. Absolutely. Go out and speak the language with people. Get practice. But when I think of, for instance, I wanted to go to Egypt, and the visa I could get was a maximum of 2 months. So I did not want to spend those 2 months in my room studying. So I spent the 3 months before that intensively learning the language. Then when I arrived in Egypt, I did not spend any time studying, because I was there for the culture. I was there for the experience. I was there to meet people, and I was going to use the basic conversational skills I reached in Egyptian Arabic to help me do those things. So whenever you think of brief times in another country, do not imagine you're going to be studying. Don't wait until you're there and then use that time in the country for studying. That's so wasteful. The opportunities, you could be out using it. But if that's in the future, do all your studying now where you currently are. And then don't be studying in the country. You want to be out using the language, taking advantage of the country. So I do not recommend being in your hotel room studying if you're in a country briefly. You can hear Shatsy's barking away there. Okay, and last couple of questions. What if I do all of that, and then by the end of the day I have no energy and to do anything I enjoy or want to do? So if you don't have energy, get sleep. If you reach the end of your day and you really hoped you'd have the energy to learn a language or any other project, and you don't, then this tells you something. You're not living the kind of life that gives you enough energy. So go sleep. Go eat food that isn't as heavy. go exercise. Not at 11 p.m. at night, obviously. I mean, make that a part of your routine, and you might find that you get a little bit more energy. You know, obviously, it's I'm simplifying things because it's hard to know the individual cases for everybody and what gives them or takes away energy. But I hope that helps. And a final question, Nora on YouTube wants to know how to block specific sites. Holly, did you find any of the resources? Like I said, on Firefox, I use Leech Block. On Chrome, I use Stay Focused. So that's STAYFOUSD. So you remove the E, and I just give it a list of sites and then say block them for me, and then I can't use them. So the way you block specific sites is just put the URL in the settings of this plugin for your browser. So just like search for block sites plugin, whatever the name of the browser that you use, and you will find the tools that you need. All right, so I hope that today's live session has helped. I hope you guys found it interesting. And again, make sure to subscribe. And if you're watching this after the fact, thanks everyone for joining. And I still have more stuff I wanted to discuss, so I will come back to this time management stuff another time. So don't worry if I missed your question. You will be seeing this more again, maybe in a month or so. But I got plenty of other live videos for you guys, and I hope you will enjoy them. So thanks for watching, everybody, and happy language learning.